Imagine sitting at a family dinner, and the bride-to-be, your own cousin, makes a cruel joke about you being a single mom. Everyone laughs, even your mother. But then her fiancé stands up, and in front of the entire room, he says something that changes everything. And this is the story of how the night meant to humiliate me turned into the night that ended my cousin's wedding. My name is Vanessa Bennett, and I am 30 years old. For the last decade, I've been a single mother to my daughter, Grace, the brightest little light in a life that hasn't always been kind. I got pregnant at 19, and from that day forward, the story my family told about me changed forever. To them, I stopped being Vanessa, the niece who once had dreams, the cousin who used to make everyone laugh. I became the cautionary tale the mistake whispered about at gatherings. But I never saw Grace as a mistake. She was the only good thing I had when the world turned its back on me. While her father walked away without even a second glance, I worked nights, cleaned offices, waited tables, and took any freelance job I could get, just to keep a roof over our heads. Life hasn't been easy, but we survived. And in the quiet moments when Grace smiles at me with her big, curious eyes, I know we're doing more than surviving. We're living. Still, no matter how far I've come, there's one thing I can never escape: the weight of my family's judgment. To them, I am frozen at 19, a foolish girl who threw her future away. They don't see the woman I've become, the mother, the provider, the fighter. And sometimes, when I catch their stares or hear their sly comments, I wonder if they ever will. I didn't know it yet, but soon, I would face that judgment again. And this time, I wouldn't be alone in the fire. This time, someone would stand up not just for me, but for the truth. It started with a piece of mail that felt heavier than paper should. A cream-colored envelope, the kind that looked expensive before I even opened it. The gold lettering on the front read, "Miss Vanessa Bennett." I already knew who it was from. My cousin, Isabella Wells. Inside was the invitation, an engagement dinner in her honor. Isabella, the golden girl of the family, the one who could do no wrong. She had the college degree, the world travels, the perfect job, the perfect fiancé, and now she would have the perfect wedding. I held the card for a long moment, my hands trembling slightly. The last time I'd spoken to Isabella, she had made a joke at a baby shower about me, collecting diapers and regrets. Everyone laughed. I smiled to hide the sting, but inside, it cut deep. That was 6 months ago, and we hadn't spoken since. For a second, I thought about throwing the invitation straight in the trash, but then my phone buzzed my mother. She had already called 3 times that week to remind me, "Just go, Vanessa. Smile, be polite, don't cause a scene." That was always her advice: shrink yourself, make everyone else comfortable, even when they made me bleed. That night, Grace noticed the card sitting on the table. She picked it up and asked, "Are we going somewhere fancy, Mommy?" Her eyes were wide with excitement, and I couldn't bring myself to say no. I wanted her to feel like she belonged, even if I knew better. So I decided. We would go, for my mother, for appearances, but mostly for Grace. What I didn't know then was that walking into that dinner would change everything. The week before the dinner, I felt the pressure building. I didn't have a closet full of fancy dresses or designer shoes like Isabella. My life was measured in grocery lists, overdue bills, and Grace's school projects. Still, I wanted to walk into that room with dignity. I pulled out the nicest dress I owned. It was a little snug at the waist, a little faded at the seams, but it would have to do. I borrowed a pair of heels from my neighbor, praying they wouldn't pinch too much. Grace insisted on helping me pick jewelry. She held up a small silver heart-shaped necklace and said, "This one, Mommy. It looks like mine." Her words caught me. She didn't see me as a failure or a disappointment. She just saw her mom, her safe place. That gave me courage. On the day of the dinner, I curled my hair, applied light makeup, and told myself to stand tall. Grace wore a simple blue dress with a ribbon tied at the waist. She twirled in front of the mirror, laughing. For a moment, I almost believed we could walk into that dinner and just be accepted. Almost. The restaurant was the kind of place I usually walked past, never inside. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters in black suits moving like shadows. The moment we stepped in, I felt the shift, the stares, the whispers, the polite smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. We were led to the far end of the long table, tucked away like an afterthought. My Aunt Lorraine sat beside me, flipping through pictures of her dog in Halloween costumes, pretending I didn't exist outside of being Grace's mom. Then came Isabella. She floated around the room in a satin dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Air kisses, perfect posture, glowing like she owned the world. When her eyes landed on me, she smiled politely, then said with a slight tilt of her head, "You came alone?" I swallowed. "Just me and Grace." "Oh," she replied with a faint smirk. "Well, the kids' table is that way." She turned before I could answer. My mother leaned in, whispering, "Just keep your head down. You look nice tonight. Not beautiful, not radiant, just nice." I forced a smile. "For Grace," I told myself. Always for Grace. Dinner started with small talk, laughter that felt rehearsed, and toasts that didn't include me. Grace sat at the kids' table, drawing spaceships on napkins, giggling with children she'd just met. I envied her innocence. At my end of the table, I was invisible. I passed bread, poured water, nodded politely, while relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years acted like they knew what was best for my life. Every smile hid judgment. Every glance reminded me I didn't belong. Then it happened. Isabella stood up, champagne flute in hand, her diamond ring catching the light. The room hushed. With a polished smile, she said, "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight." Polite applause followed. Then her eyes flicked toward me. "And I truly hope I never end up like some people single, 30, raising a child alone." Laughter erupted. Real laughter. Not awkward, not hesitant, cruel. My uncle slapped the table. Even my mother chuckled behind her hand. I sat frozen, gripping my napkin until it twisted in my hands. Across the room, Grace kept coloring, unaware. My face burned, my heart pounded. No one defended me. Not one voice said, "That's enough." At that moment, I wasn't a cousin, a daughter, or a mother. I was a joke. The sound of their laughter cut deeper than Isabella's words. My Uncle Victor, her father, slapped the table so hard the silverware rattled. Someone at the far end wiped tears of amusement from her eyes. Even my own mother gave a small chuckle, covering her mouth as if that made it less cruel. I sat still, gripping my napkin so tightly it tore. My cheeks burned, my chest thudded, my vision blurred at the edges. I wanted to vanish into the floor. Isabella, satisfied with her performance, went on as if nothing had happened. She joked about how her fiancé, Marcus, had to give up video games now that he was a real man. The laughter was weaker this time, but still, no one said a word about me. I glanced toward the kids' table. Grace was still drawing, humming softly to herself, blissfully unaware. For that, I was grateful. I could take the pain, but not if she saw it. That night, I realized something terrible. They didn't see me as family anymore. I was a story they told to make themselves feel better. A warning wrapped in a name. The silence after the laughter was worse than the laughter itself. No one spoke up. No one said, "That's enough." My mother kept her head down. My Aunt Lorraine tapped her phone, pretending to scroll. Cousins avoided my eyes. Even the ones who looked uncomfortable stayed quiet because silence was easier. Because I had been cast in this role failure, disappointment for so long that no one dared to rewrite it. Inside, my thoughts screamed, "Say something, Vanessa. Stand up. Leave." But my body stayed still, locked by years of being told to keep your head down. I reminded myself, I am not what they say I am. I thought of Grace's laughter, her joy, her belief in me. For her, I would not let their cruelty define me. But still, I stayed quiet, and they believed that meant I agreed. By the time the main course was cleared, I felt like a ghost. I moved through the motions, smiling when needed, nodding when spoken to, but inside I was unraveling. Isabella thrived on it. Every time she glanced my way, there was triumph in her eyes, like she had reminded everyone exactly where I belonged beneath her. But beneath that humiliation, something else stirred. Anger. Not the wild, fiery kind. A steady, quiet anger that whispered, "You deserve better. Grace deserves better." I didn't know it yet, but someone else in that room felt the same, and he was about to prove it. The clinking of glasses faded. The hum of conversation dimmed. Then a sound broke through the scrape of a chair. I looked up to see Marcus Hale. Isabella's fiancé, standing. He didn't head for the bathroom. He didn't go to the bar. He walked straight toward me. Every head turned, every fork froze midair. Isabella's smile faltered, confusion flashing across her face. Marcus stopped at my side, his voice calm but steady. I think everyone here should know something. The air thickened. Silence pressed down. My mother blinked, finally looking at me instead of through me. Isabella's hand tightened around her glass. Marcus turned to the room. What you all laughed at wasn't a joke. It was cruel. No one moved. No one breathed. Isabella opened her mouth, but Marcus raised a hand. No, let me finish. His eyes swept the table, meeting the gazes of the same people who had laughed moments ago. You treat Vanessa like she's some kind of failure, he said. But what you don't know is that she's the strongest person here. 2 years ago, when I lost my job and fell into depression, Isabella told me to snap out of it. Her father called me weak. But Vanessa? She checked in every week. She helped me fix my resume. She reminded me I wasn't worthless. She believed in me when I couldn't even believe in myself. He looked down at me, and for a second, the whole room disappeared. You didn't know me well. You didn't owe me anything, but you showed up when no one else did. A ripple of unease ran through the room. Isabella's face went pale, her perfect mask slipping. Marcus straightened, his voice firm. So when you laugh at her, you're not mocking a single mom. You're mocking the person who saved me. You're mocking real strength. The room, once filled with cruel laughter, was silent. Dead silent. And for the first time that night, I wasn't invisible. The silence was unbearable. Forks lay abandoned, wine glasses untouched. For once, no one had the courage to laugh. Isabella finally stood, her satin dress catching the light. Her smile was gone, replaced by a sharp edge. Marcus, she said through clenched teeth, what are you doing? I'm being honest, he replied, voice steady. Her eyes narrowed. Honest? You're humiliating me in front of my family. He shook his head. No, Isabella, you did that yourself. A few people shifted in their seats. My Uncle Victor muttered something under his breath, but no one dared to speak up. Isabella's face twisted as she asked the question everyone else was silently thinking. Do you have feelings for her? She jabbed a finger in my direction. The room froze again. Every gaze turned to Marcus. He looked at her like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. I have respect for her, deep respect. And if you spent less time performing perfection and more time listening, maybe you'd understand why that matters. Gasps rippled across the table. Isabella's composure cracked for the first time in years. She glanced around, desperate for support, but no one came to her rescue. Even those who had laughed earlier avoided her eyes now. This is ridiculous, she snapped. Vanessa is nothing compared to me. She made her bed at 19 and ruined her life. And you, she turned on Marcus, you're supposed to be on my side. Her words stung. But for once, I didn't shrink. I sat taller, my hands steady on the table. Marcus's voice cut through the tension. Do you hear yourself, Isabella? Do you realize how cruel you sound? Vanessa didn't ruin her life. She rebuilt it. She raised a beautiful daughter. She worked harder than anyone in this room. And instead of respecting her, you mock her to feel bigger. For the first time, Isabella's confidence faltered. The Golden Girl's crown was slipping, and everyone could see it. The room seemed to shrink around us. Isabella's eyes were wide, her face red with rage. You're embarrassing me, she hissed. Marcus took a deep breath. If standing up for what's right embarrasses you, then maybe I shouldn't be standing beside you at all. Her jaw dropped. What are you saying? He turned fully toward her, his voice steady, calm, unshakable. I can't marry someone who treats people like this, who treats family like this. If cruelty is your idea of love and respect, then you're not the person I thought you were. A stunned silence followed. My heart pounded so hard it felt like the entire room could hear it. Was this really happening? Isabella's hands shook as she clutched her glass. You don't mean that, she said, her voice trembling for the first time. Marcus's eyes didn't waver. I mean, every word. He drew in a breath, his voice carrying through the entire room. I can't marry, and I will not spend the rest of my life with someone who holds such cruelty in her heart. Gasps filled the room. The words cracked like thunder, leaving silence in their wake. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Isabella's face drained of color as if the ground had vanished beneath her. "You can't just cancel," she stammered, her voice shaking. But Marcus stood firm, his gaze steady. "The wedding is off. I refuse to build a future with someone who believes humiliating others makes them strong. That's not love. That's not respect. And it's not the life I want." The room sat frozen. Forks lay untouched. Glasses hovered in midair. And for the first time in her life, Isabella Wells, the golden girl who had always controlled the story, had no script to fall back on. The words still hung in the air. "The wedding is off." Isabella's face twisted, her voice rising in desperation. "You can't do this to me. After everything I've planned, everything my family has given you." Marcus didn't flinch. His tone was calm, steady, almost gentle. "This isn't about wedding plans or money, Isabella. This is about character. And tonight, you showed me exactly who you are." Her eyes burned with fury. "So, you're choosing her over me?" She jabbed a finger toward me, her voice sharp enough to slice through the silence. Marcus shook his head. "No. I'm choosing respect over cruelty. I'm choosing honesty over performance. I will not marry someone who finds joy in tearing down her own family." The room shifted. Guests who once laughed at Isabella's jokes now stared at their plates, ashamed. Even those who had mocked me earlier avoided her gaze. The golden girl's shine had dulled, and nothing she said could bring it back. Marcus looked at me briefly, his voice softening. "You didn't deserve any of this, Vanessa. Not tonight. Not ever." My throat tightened. I wanted to thank him, but words failed. I simply nodded, and that was enough. In that moment, everything changed. Isabella was no longer the center of the room. She was exposed, stripped of her charm, left standing in silence. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the punchline. The air was heavy, like everyone in that restaurant had forgotten how to breathe. Isabella stood frozen, her hands trembling, her face a storm of fury and disbelief. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. My Uncle Victor muttered something about Marcus being emotional, but even his voice carried no conviction. The family that had laughed so loudly minutes ago now sat trapped in silence. Their golden girl had cracked, and no one knew what to do. For once, all those eyes that had looked down on me now avoided mine. They couldn't meet my gaze. Not after Marcus's words had stripped away their excuses. I realized something powerful in that moment. Their silence wasn't power anymore. It was shame. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mother staring at me. Not past me, not through me, at me. Her lips pressed tight, her fingers trembling against the stem of her glass. For the first time, her eyes held something I had never seen before: regret. Maybe she finally understood what her silence had done. Maybe she realized how many times she'd told me to keep my head down, to be nice, when she should have told me to stand tall. I didn't expect an apology. I didn't even want one. But for the first time in years, I felt seen, not just by Marcus, but even by her. It didn't heal everything, but it was a start. I turned to the kids' table, and there she was, my Grace. She looked up from her drawing, her big brown eyes lighting up the moment she saw me. She smiled so wide it could have lit the darkest room. "Ready to go home, Mommy?" she asked as I approached. My throat tightened. I nodded. "Yes, baby, let's go." She slipped her small hand into mine without hesitation. In my other hand, I held the napkin she had been coloring on spaceships and stars scribbled with crayons. To her, it was just a doodle. To me, it was a reminder of why I endured, why I fought, why I refused to shrink. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't need to. As Grace and I walked past Marcus, he didn't make a scene. He didn't try to stop us or say anything dramatic. He simply gave me a small nod. A nod that said, "You are not alone. You mattered here tonight." It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was respect. And in that nod, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: dignity. Behind us, Isabella's voice rose in anger. But I didn't look back. That wasn't my fight anymore. I had already won. Not because Marcus canceled the wedding, but because I walked out with my daughter, head held high, unbroken. The night air outside was cool against my skin. Grace swung my hand as we walked, humming to herself. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt light. I thought about everything that had happened, about how quickly a family's laughter can turn to silence, how a single cruel joke can reveal years of hidden judgment, and how one voice, one honest voice, can shatter it all. Strength doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like staying calm when others try to shame you. Sometimes it's walking away, not in defeat, but in dignity. That night, I realized something important. I had always been enough. Isabella's cruelty didn't change that. My family's silence didn't change that. And Marcus's words didn't give me worth. They only reminded me I already had it. So if you've ever been laughed at, judged, or made to feel small, remember this. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your shame. You already belong. And sometimes, the most unforgettable revenge is living your truth without fear.
Wow, what a night. From being mocked as a single mom, to having Marcus cancel the wedding and expose Isabella's cruelty in front of everyone. This story proves something powerful. Silence is not strength. Respect, dignity, and truth are. Vanessa didn't fight with insults. She stood tall, and the truth defended her. But tell me, what would you have done if you were in Vanessa's shoes? Would you have walked out sooner? Or stayed and let Marcus's words reveal the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories that touch the heart and remind us you already belong. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most unforgettable revenge is simply living your truth without fear.